My wife named my fabulous motorcycle Dragon, which is awfully fun. Well, Dragon is a 2009 R1200GS Adventure, and last time I rode it, I came home and parked it, and then I found that there was an oil spot underneath the bike, just in front of the rear wheel, and this was the culprit. So it was leaking at the seal, at least right here on this shock, which I'm told is actually the original equipment shock, an ESA suspension shock from 2009, and evidently EPM had serviced it at some point, so there's some bit of serviceability, but I was told by Ted Porter not to service it again, but to just replace it. And so I have taken his advice and gotten TFX shocks, really fabulous shocks, and I am about to work on installing. So I've sprayed some of this goop off stuff on there to remove some of the grease oil that had splashed on it. I'm just letting it soak for a little bit. Then I'm going to work on getting this thing reinstalled. So this is an ongoing project. I had to disconnect the bag supports, and sadly this bolt here is really well stuck. So I was able to loosen it enough to get this thing to get out of the way, and that was really helpful in getting access. So getting the exhaust off and such. So had to take off the muffler, just the muffler, and then I propped up the swing arm here in order to get the right positioning. So I didn't have a problem getting this bolt out. It came out fine, and I was able to get the top part out just fine too. And so now I am going to be cleaning, and then I'm going to install the fabulous new shock. So I'll get to that in a video soon. So it's going to go right in there. This little aspect has been driving me crazy. Sadly, it says that I am supposed to use a snap ring pliers to grab and remove the collar from inside the swing arm. If the collar is stuck, remove it as described in step 7. Well, that brings me over to here, and I'm telling you, this has been driving me crazy because there is a kind of collar right there, but I'm now convinced that there is no way that sucker's coming out. It is not coming out. And I think that they were messing with me to even suggest it's possible, because I'm now going upside down. On the other side, it's just plain bigger. It's bigger on the other side, and their picture described pulling it out on this side. So I think that just stays in place, and this is where the bolt head kind of countersinks, so to speak. So they've sent me on a wild goose chase of effort, and I'm a little put out about it. Here it is. Beautiful new piece of equipment for my motorcycle. TFX, top of their line, rear shock. Excited to get it all tweaked. So I'm about to install it. I just put some grease on the one end of the bolt, and I put thread lock on the nut that's going to go up here at the top of the whole system. So I'm installing that one first. I put some thread lock on the receiving end of the swing arm there that this bolt's going to go in, and I'm going to lubricate that before I insert it here in a minute. So I'm about to torque this down to 37 pound-feet. This is the top bolt for the suspension, the rear shock. Put a little of this on this bolt. This is the lower shock bolt. There it is. TFX 142 rear shock. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? So the sun is set, and I'm still working on putting together my bike. Getting the shock in was actually not that hard, but getting the silly side case mounting brackets back on turned out to be a bigger nuisance than anticipated, and it's because I figured I had a hard time remembering where this little sleeve, there's a little like spacer or sleeve out of aluminum that's tucked in behind here. Okay, I figured that one out, but what I did not figure out was where the other little spacer went, and it goes up above this bar here, and it turns out that little sucker has to go in before and it goes in with a small end up, and then it provides a space, and you got to get that bolt through. It turns out I had to take off everything else because I had done all these, and then I got to that, and it's like, oh, that must be where that spacer goes. Well, you cannot get that thing in unless you remove all this other stuff again in order to do it. So that one has to go in first, and then this one, I guess, or those almost have to go in simultaneously, and then these become pretty simple in this thing here. So, bit of a nuisance. So I managed to finish up the bike last night, with the exception that I haven't put the side case on here so we can see. So look, we have this beautiful new TFX suspension, all adjustable, fantastic, and it's well positioned. It's torqued in exactly right. I got the side case bracket back on, it's completely secure. And I got the silencer, as they call it in the manual, back on, and it's properly mounted and everything, so that's all good. The wheels back on and all torqued to spec, 44 pound-feet, and so I'm pretty psyched to go riding. I decided I'm going to try it out with just the back shock on and wait to do the front one for some period of time. I might start later this afternoon, we'll see. But I am quite excited about going for a ride. It was set up for a fellow who was just a little bit heavier than I am, and so I am hopeful, he's like 20 pounds heavier than I am. I'm hopeful that it'll be well set up for me right now, but I can adjust it, of course, very much. So this is big development. I did these final touches with the headlamp on. Oh yeah, right, headlamp on in the night, but I was able to see very well. There's this Meyer plastic mud guard. That's gonna keep the mud off of the new shock. I'm really glad to have that too. That took a little figuring. It turns out that the nuts, you can see those bolts rather, those bolts were already, well, there was a pair like them, but shorter, that was holding in the plastic guard that was, you know, original to the machine. So it's simply a matter of taking out the previous nut or bolts and then putting in the slightly longer ones that came with this Meyer guard. And then oh yes, I'm remembering now, I did not yet put in the zip strips. There's meant to be zip strips put in here and on the other side. So that's actually got to be done, and then I'm firing it up, and we'll see if I need to adjust any more on the preload or anything.